Hey everybody, it's Jack with Future Pastimes, and in this video I'm going to be taking a look at another homebrew faction that was posted to Board Game Geek, and this is another faction from Gary, the Commando, and I suspect that he has also posted this on the Dune Tabletop Discord where he play tested it and got feedback from the people there. And like Gary's other homebrew that he recently posted, the Mikarol, or I'm not even sure how to pronounce that one, I really enjoy this faction, Lindaren. And this is another one that is a house from this Dune Adventures in the Imperium book. It's got the Houses of the Landsred. I recently picked this up myself. It's got a lot of fun stuff in it, lots of interesting lore ideas and details that for the Dune aficionado are fun to consider, and I think it's really good fodder for homebrewing. So let's take a look at this faction. They're going to start with all of their forces and reserves and 12 spice. And if you can kind of compare that to, let's say, Atreides and Harkonnen, they start with 10 forces on the board, 10 spice. That's like a 20 spice value there. So they're a little bit behind in the value here. They're about 8 spice shy. They have no board presence, and they don't really have an income, as you will see. So this is interesting, but they've got some powerful effects that I think maybe offset that. This faction has 4 Lindaren Arms treachery cards that are marked with their symbol. If we kind of scroll down here, you can see these are what they look like. This is sort of a face-up illustration of how they work. So we'll take a closer look at those here in a second. So they have 2 basic advantages, and there's 1 advanced advantage. And I do enjoy if a homebrew can get it all on one side. And I know it's really challenging, especially the more factions that are out and become canon, the more you have to account for them. And that's why text sometimes gets longer and longer as you are sort of pre-explaining edge cases and stuff like that. There's not too much of that here. So let's take a look at their first one, Arms Dealers. So their Lindaren Arms cache starts face down in front of their shield. At the beginning of the battle phase, they can either announce that a card is being drawn from their cache, and then, in which case they secretly choose one and add it to their hand, or they may instead place one of their face-up cache cards back into their cache, and that'll make more sense here as we look at some of these other effects. So the cache cards do not count against your hand limit. So if you have a full hand, you can still get one of these Lindaren Arms into your hand. At the end of the battle phase, any of your cache cards still in anybody's hands are discarded, and they're all discarded after use. So once they're discarded, they are placed face up in front of the shield instead of going to the discard pile. Your face-up cache cards in front of your shield are separate from your cache. Okay, so an important distinction there. Now, their other basic advantage is smugglers. And I'll get more into this one here in a second. At the end of the shipping and movement phase, in any one territory where you have forces, except when they're under storm, you can either send up to 3 forces into that territory for free or return 3 to your reserves for free. And again, this is send, which is not ship. So advisors, presumably, that's how I understand send, since I think the one that coined it. Maybe not. No advisors. So that's an interesting thing, and this is going to help make up for their no income and their, I say their small amount of spice. They have more spice on average than anybody else, but they are at a deficit there. So before we get into these other things, let's take a look at these cards. So we've got a body armor, which is a projectile defense. We've got an antidote, which is a poison defense. We have a Kindle projectile weapon, and Zenobia, a poison weapon. And these are, right out of Dune. The Dune Wiki mentions these, and certainly we've looked at them at Future Pastimes. So it's just your standard. This is the perfect hand here, the projectile weapon of defense, poison weapon of defense. So they can pick one of these up and secretly add it to their hand when it's in the cache. Once it gets used, or once it's been discarded, then everybody knows a certain card is going to be face up. So you'll have great, got the body armor here is face up, and if I take another card from the cache, we know it's not going to be that. So that's an interesting thing that you got to factor in here. Now let's take a look at the advanced game advantage. So arms recovery once per turn, and this is game turn or round, as it's more understood globally in the gaming community. After resolving a battle that you won, if your opponent discarded a non-special weapon or defense of the same type as one of your face-up cache cards, you may place the corresponding cache card, including one that was played in the battle, back into your cache. So this is how you get these cards back into your cache. So that's interesting. The Karama here, the Karama effect, once per game Karama, beginning at the beginning of the battles phase before you interact with your cache to place all of your face-up cache cards in front of your shield back into your cache. So yeah, if you've got I got a couple of things here. I got both types of weapons, for example. I don't want anybody to know which one I'm taking, so use the Karama to put it into the cache, and maybe you don't even take either of them because you've got weapons and you're taking a defense that you think you might need. The alliance advantage is when you choose a card to draw from your cache, you may add the chosen card to your ally's hand instead of your own. So that's interesting as well. If you and your ally can share information and be like, all right, what do you have? Oh, you don't have a poison defense. Well, I can help you out with one of those for one battle. And then, at the end of that battles phase, it's going to just get put face up. So it's interesting here. You've got in the advanced game, you've got this mechanism here for getting these cards back into your cache. You also have here, remember, at the beginning of the battle phase, you may either announce that a card is being drawn from your cache and secretly choose it, or you may put one of your face-up cards back into your cache. So you've got that as well. But this is an extra way to sort of get that stuff back in a little more quickly. So you could have drawn one and then later on add one back in. So I think that makes sense. So this is very straightforward. This is not a complicated faction, which is another thing I really like about it. It's very easy to understand. It all fits on the one side, as I mentioned, and it is thematic too. If you read through the sort of history and the capabilities of this faction, it does make sense. This is supposed to be sort of a scythe, I think, and crazy futuristic dune scythe, probably totally mechanized. So yeah, these are nice. They say on here, how it works, and then discard after use. Discard this if it is in your hand at the end of the battle phase. Once discarded, place this card face up in front of the Lindaren's shield instead of the discard pile. So it's all there and nice to use. The Alliance card makes sense as well. He's got a nice Karama reference here that lets you know how the different advantages are stopped by Karama, and again, the once per game effect there. Nice prediction card for the BG. Here we'll have, again, some familiar faces for people who homebrew. These guys show up now and again. We've got these names, again, largely drawn from this resource. So that's another thing that this is handy for. It's like this was made for people who want to homebrew stuff for Dune. Your trader cards, your force token, your faction marker. Then we have the homeworld. So, Kia 4. Who knows how that's supposed to be pronounced. So their high threshold. This is when they've got 8 or more of their forces in their reserves. They gain 2 spice from the spice bank when a Lindaren arms cache card is placed back into your cache. So this is nice. I think it's smart to have as some kind of income thing. Part of what we wanted to do with the homeworlds, in some cases, certainly not all, was to look at where is a faction at a disadvantage. Sometimes the non-economic factions have got some way to get some spice, like this one, or factions that don't have much board presence maybe can get more, so like the one for Rich S. So they've got just a 2 strength home field advantage, but it's higher when they are at low threshold. And so their low threshold effect is you may not return forces to this planet with their smuggler's advantage. Remember that's a two-way thing. They can either send more into that territory, which I think is something they're going to want to do more often. It's even the guild. It's pretty rare that they return to their reserves, but it's nice that they've got that option. And then it makes sense that the low threshold penalty. It's not going to hamstring them too much. Now, if you occupy their planet, you're going to get a 2 spice income, and plus the Lindaren Arms cash cards do not block weapons nor kill leaders when used against the occupier or their ally. So this is a great effect. This is a really strong reason for you to want to occupy their homeworld, which is this cold, Hoth-like thing, and this I think is Hoth from some Star Wars database of planet art. So we have a Nexus card here. So the Betrayal effect, which is sort of like a Karama against Lindaren. So prevent a Lindaren Arms cash card from being drawn, or prevent them from using their Smuggler's Advantage, but not both. So you've got some options there, and I think that's pretty good. It's nice that if the Nexus card has got some advantage, if they're in the game and someone else draws this card, this is the only effect that they can use. So you want it to be an effect that they're going to be able to play. The Cunning effect, of course, is if Lindaren draws their own card. They may draw 2 cards instead of 1, and that's pretty good too. I like that effect. And then we have the Secret Ally. So this is interesting. If they're not in the game and you draw this Nexus card, that means that their cash cards are really not going to be in the game. So at the end of the shipping and movement phase, you may send up to 3 forces from your reserves to any territory not under Storm, where you have forces for free. So in a change from what most of the Nexus cards, these Secret Ally effect was supposed to try to simulate the actual ally advantage. That's why with the Bene Gesserit one, you get the voice. It's certainly not always practical, so I think this makes sense. It probably wouldn't be a terrible idea for you to be able to, say, yeah, take all 4 of those cards and draw 1. That would have been an interesting effect too. I think that would work. I think it would all right bringing those cards into play for the Nexus card, because it's not like you need to search through them, and it's pretty easy to understand. It's a projectile weapon in defense and a poison weapon in defense. So that you can, it's not like having, if for instance the ECAS one were to be like, use an ambassador effect, and you're like, well, I got to bring out that shield and I want to read it and know what all those effects are before I play the card and tip my hand that I even have that card. So I think Gary could have gone with that, but I think this works too. So it is not like the actual alliance advantage, which again, if we scroll back up, the alliance advantage is that when you use your ability to draw from the cache, you can give that card to your ally instead, which I think is good. I think that's a better advantage than the Smuggler one for an ally effect. But for the Nexus card, this is not bad. It's just basically you're getting a free 3 forces added into that territory. So, yeah, and it's at the end, which is nice, at the end of the shipping and movement phase. So if that's when you're like, oh, wow, someone else has come in here, or I have to fight over this spice, it is nice that you're going to be able to go, boop, I'm going to add 3 more. This is a nice go for the win kind of effect. So I think that this is pretty good. So I don't think I would have argued with Gary to change it. I think this is pretty good. So overall, I think he's done a great job. I like the it's nice clean look of all the components. So if you're somebody that wants to make your own components, and maybe Zoltan will offer this up as a thing that you can just order, he'll make it for you. I think this is a very worthy inclusion, and frankly, I think that if I mention. And I know I sound like a broken record, but I mentioned that Kwisatz Haderach Game Found. If you haven't started following it so that you can leave comments, I urge you to do so, and let Gale Force 9 know that you'd love to see. I would be all in on having this as a stretch goal or an add-on or something like this. I think both of these are really good factions. I'm quite pleased with it. I think Gary's done a great job. I like where his brain is working. So. Let me know what you think of this faction. I'll put a link to this page on Board Game Geek so you can chime in there as well. I'm sure Gary would love to hear more feedback on it. There are a few comments on here that people have made, some suggestions and questions, and Gary has been pretty good at responding to that. So, yeah, chime in. Let me know here, but also chime in there and get in on that GameFound. Let your voice be heard. Because Gale Force 9 does listen to those things. They do read them every once in a while. So that's it for this one, everyone. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again soon.